Bob Sellers here with Allison Maloney. The Supreme Court today, it's a busy time of year for them. They declined to hear a case arguing that male-only military draft is discriminatory and unconstitutional. Now, this comes as the High Court ruled unanimously today against allowing illegal aliens with temporary protected status from seeking green cards to remain in the country permanently, in other words, becoming legal. The Supreme Court is also weighing a few other major cases, including repealing Obamacare and Arizona election laws. A lot there to chew on. Let's discuss it with distinguished university professor at Touro College and author of the book Saving Free Speech, Thane Rosenbaum. Thane, I want to make sure I have it right. Essentially, the court appeared to give deference to Congress. If you want to draft only men, up to you. If you want to go back and change that, up to you. Am I reading that right?
Yes, quite right, Bob. The Supreme Court was clear. Congress deals with national defense. Congress deals with military affairs. And the last time the Supreme Court discussed this back in 1981, they said, well, women should not be exposed to the draft because they can't serve in combat roles. That no longer is true. So I think the Supreme Court, if they had taken the case, might have ended up ruling in favor of requiring women to be drafted. Remember, this case was brought by men who are saying that the law discriminates against them because they get punished not for registering and women wouldn't. But you're quite right. What the Supreme Court said here is it's really not for us to decide. We're not in the war business.
Yeah, Thane, I want to get your take also on this other case that they ruled illegal aliens with temporary protected status from seeking green cards. Can you weigh in a little bit about that?
Yes, Allison. What's interesting about that is it's similar to what Donald Trump said, which is you get no special privileges for not showing up through an illegal entry port and have a customs official either inspect you or parole you in. If you don't come in that way, we will not in the end benefit you. And what this law was about, which is again 9-0, all the justices were unanimous. Think how rare that is. And yet they essentially ruled in favor of something that President Trump would have agreed with, which is that this program is here for temporary protected status if you come from a war-torn country or a country that just had a national disaster. But if you entered illegally and you spend 20 years here indefinitely under the protection of that program, and you have 4 children, all born in the United States, you never get a green card because you never entered in legally. You can stay, your children are citizens, but we will never benefit you with permanent status because of the way you entered. And 9-0, think about that. All the liberals, we never see that, right? We always expect 5-4 or 6-3.
Yeah, now, I understand that the administration is not that upset by this ruling. Why do you think that is?
Bob, it's a good question because, AOC is upset by that ruling right now, right? She's screaming about it because the progressive left says there should be no barriers to entry. You shouldn't punish people for not entering through a lawful port. It doesn't matter how they get here. I think that the Biden administration was clearly more moderate and measured in this regard. And remember, this case was not about undoing the temporary protected status law, right? That's where they would have stepped in, the Biden administration.
Well, Thane, let me ask you very quickly. Do you think it's possible that they want to redefine what legal is? Or do you think they may want to give a path to citizenship and say, well, we went through this process and now it's going to take 8 years or 13 years, whatever process it is?
Well, Bob, it is correct that unlike the Trump administration that said never we will adjust your status, that is not the Biden administration's position. Their position is that we can contemplate a situation in the future that we give you a pathway to permanent residency, but not now, not at this time.
Thane, also, the Supreme Court will soon be ruling on Obamacare. We've heard about this. We continue to hear about it. What do you think is going to be the end result?
Allison, it's a tough one, right? Remember, Obamacare was constitutionality was based on a principle that there was a single payer requirement, which meant that there was a tax under the Commerce Clause, that there would be a penalty for not entering into the Obamacare program. And so that was when it first came before the Supreme Court, it was the Commerce Clause tax that was the reason the Supreme Court upheld the law. But now the tax is zero, right?
Right.
If the tax is now zero, is it a tax? And that's the legal question. Because if it's no longer a tax, can you undo the entire Obamacare? Because it was entirely based on one argument: taxable power of the federal government.
But the mandate wasn't a tax. You know that. I know that. And they ruled that way. It was a case in which the Supreme Court was seeing something that actually wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, look, conservatives will never forgive Chief Justice Roberts, right? Because Chief Justice Roberts wrote the opinion, and he's the one that found what I would have argued was a very clever, very, very interesting legal theory. Nobody believed that that would be the legal theory that the court would go. So you're making an argument, a good one, Bob. You're saying it's a legal fiction, right? You're saying you can call it a tax if you want to call it a tax, but it's not really a tax. But Bob, it's the only reason, it's the only rationale that the Supreme Court gave. So that's why this is in jeopardy. If you're really an Obamacare enthusiast, you're in trouble.
Because Roberts wanted it to pass. Roberts wanted it to be upheld. So he found something. I mean, that's my theory. But you're nodding your head. So.
You always show off the fact that you have legal skills without going to law school.
He plays it on TV.
I missed the opportunity. I think my grades needed to be a little higher to get into whatever school you went to.
I always give you an A. You know that, Bob.
Well, thank you, Thane. I appreciate it. Thane Rosenbaum. Always a pleasure. Newsmax TV, folks, has a great app, and you can use it to watch us